What comes to your mind when I say Wildlife Images Rehabilitation and Education Center? Now, to have you thinking? Well, think about this. A filmmaker and his son shooting wildlife films. One day, father says to son, "You know, we don't have to live in Southern California to do what we're doing." In today's episode, Dave Siddon of Wildlife Images, he joins me. Now, picture this, pun intended. Nestled close to the Rogue River in Grants Pass, Oregon, is a special place. It's a sanctuary for wild animals from all over the world. Dave Sr. and Dave Jr., both major wildlife enthusiasts, created this haven. Now, you can just feel it when he talks about it. In 1981, Dave Sr. founded Wildlife Rescue to rescue, rehabilitate, and educate the public about wildlife. They help over 1,000 animals every year that are injured, sick, or orphaned, and are able to bring back 80% to the wild. Now, the ones that can't be returned back to the wild, they become educational ambassadors for the public. Now, they've created this cool, really cool summer program for kids. It's called, now I want you to wait for it, Camp EEK. Great name, by the way. It stands for Environment, Education, and Conservation. It helps kids to better understand nature and the importance of it. Now, from Shamu at SeaWorld to the Oregon Zoo, Dave has this wealth of knowledge and this wealth of stories. So get ready for your heart to warm, and as we hear all about this wonderful Shangri-La for animals.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Everybody, and welcome back to the For Real Podcast. And as I always say, I've got a really good one today. My guest today is Dave Siddon. Dave, thank you so much for joining the show, and I can't wait to talk to you and, let everybody know who you are and what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks for having us. It's good to be part of this.
Well, it's a good one, and you guys are doing some amazing thing. But I thought what I would do is, when we got started, as I normally do, is really get into history. I know you and your dad both were in filmmaking industry. So let's start with your dad, because he's the one that started this thing, and kind of bring him in and get to you, and then get to, what wildlife's doing, and just go from there.
All right. Well, yeah, my father was a writer and a filmmaker, and his passion was always wildlife. And so all of his films basically were, or most of his films were documentaries, and based around conservation of one sort or another. Probably his primary passion was condors. And of course, when he was doing his film work, it was primarily in the late 60s, early 70s, when the condor population was still in the wild, but it was disappearing rapidly.
Was this in California? Because that's what I remember growing up, all the condors being less there. Is that where we're talking about?
It is. It's in the Tehachapi Wilderness area primarily.
Sure.
And it was in California. So he did a lot of work with conservation organizations, and the LA Zoo was kind of big into condor conservation. They had the very first captive California condor, Topa Topa.
Oh, really?
So I remember as a kid going to the zoo with him and seeing Topa and some of the other exotic birds. But you could understand, once you've seen a condor up close and personal, how they can kind of get under your skin and become something pretty special. They're very big.
Yeah.
And, they're kind of a holdover from the Pleistocene. They just haven't changed in thousands and thousands of years. But unfortunately, human intervention kind of destroyed the wild population.
Sure.
They're a very vulnerable bird. They're very susceptible to things like lead poisoning and encroachment on their habitat. They're slow to reproduce, only one egg every other year typically. So they don't rebound very quickly from big fires or catastrophes of one sort or another. So anyway, I ended up hauling camera gear up and down mountainsides and everything from the time I was, 10 or 12 years old.
That's pretty exciting now.
Yeah, it was. It was really neat to see that going on, in the wild. And so I ended up being his camera assistant for many, many years, and all kinds of different expeditions. And thing. So I grew up with sort of the wildlife vibe built into me. And so when he came to Oregon back in the early 70s, he was working on films in LA and decided, gosh, I don't need to live in this place to be able to do what I'm doing. I can live anywhere. So he found this piece of property on the Rogue River in Oregon and almost sight unseen bought the property and moved up here. In the process of moving to Oregon, of course, we had eagles and hawks and everything always. You are crossing state lines with federally protected wildlife. So you have to get permits to do this or you violate something called the Lacey Act. So I moved into Oregon, and of course, those permits go across the desk of the local sheriff and state police and fish and wildlife. And so these guys want to come out and check this guy out who's this guy coming into the area with these eagles and hawks. So they came out and met my dad, and he was one of these guys that's bigger than life character with 1,000 different stories. And so when they came out and met him, something clicked about, boy, next time we get an injured animal, let's haul it out to that guy. So that's how Wildlife Images began, innocently enough. And my father hadn't planned on building a rehabilitation center up here and had nothing like that in mind. But everybody that was in the area decided they wanted to come over. And, once a newspaper article came out about him, then everybody felt like, well, it's open house. Come over to the Siddons and see the animals. And, knocking at the door at any given hour wanting to see the animals. So eventually he decided it's going to have to become a nonprofit and have a different piece of property so he can have some peace and quiet. So,
Mine, yeah.
in 1981, he reluctantly put together the nonprofit. And I say reluctantly because he was an autocrat, like the idea of following directions or from anybody. Of course, with a nonprofit, you have to have a board, and you have to have all sorts of other things in mind. So anyway, he took it on, became a nonprofit in 1981, bought a piece of property right next door to them, and that's where Wildlife Images officially began. And it's just been growing in size and of course the different array of things that we do with education, and we work real closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Forensics Lab in Ashland. We did a lot of film work back in the up until about 10 years ago. We did lots of film work, but permits got more difficult every year for doing wildlife film work with eagles and hawks, which were our specialty. Now with all the advent of all the computer generated graphics and everything, there's a lot less work out there for wild animal films. In fact, some of the newer films don't even involve wild animals. It's like The Revenant. There was no bears in that movie.
And is that CGI?
Yeah, it's all CGI now.
Yeah.
So a lot of that. And of course, CGI, you don't have to worry about permits and transporting the animals and a lot of that sort of thing. So for a lot of the film companies, I'm sure it's become a more palatable way of going because it's in some cases probably less expensive.
Well, plus now with AI coming too, I'm sure that's going to change that even more.
Yeah, it's getting more and more realistic every time you turn around and somebody's doing something new that's amazing. But it's a shame because that's the film work is what started Wildlife Images. We had a red-tailed hawk named Happy, who was the name was a real misnomer because she was happy. She was the nastiest red tail we ever had, I think. And back in 72 or 3, McCann Erickson, a big advertising firm, contacted my father and wanted his advice on finding a bird to represent the Buick Corporation. So he thought, well, the red-tailed hawk is kind of a maligned species. There's a lot of people that call them chicken hawks and just shoot them because they are a member of the family Buteo, so they are a soaring hawk. So long, lazy circles in the sky, circling over fields, watching for small mammals or reptiles coming out and dive down on them. So they made real easy targets of opportunity for people out there plinking with a gun. So we thought, wow, why don't we use a red-tailed hawk and maybe we can sort of change the image of red-tailed hawks with something really positive like this.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, Happy was adopted by the Buick Corporation, I think in 72 or 3 when they introduced the little Skyhawk to the car. And we did the Buick commercials for 16 years with Happy, and all kinds of settings, all kinds of situations. But it really it helped give red-tailed hawks a very positive perspective to the public, and I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
So anyway, that was a lot of the financial support that early on Wildlife Images needed to get started, and so Happy really made a difference that way.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you because I know, I mean, you were working with your dad, but you kind of worked on your own as well. So let's get a little of your background and let's really dig into what you guys are doing. And also, while you're doing that, explain where the name comes from. We figured it out when we talked the other day, but for everybody, so they understand what it is, it makes sense once you know understand it.
Yeah, well, my background, of course, the early days was working with my dad on the films. Then at one of the expeditions I went on in the Sea of Cortez, we were looking for a lost population of condors. One of the guys on the expedition was a guy named Frank Todd, who at the time was the director of the avian curator at the LA Zoo. Became a good friend of my father's. He left the zoo and went to work for this new park down in San Diego called SeaWorld. And he was to put together a waterfowl collection for SeaWorld. So not long after one of the expeditions, he called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to come to work for me?" And I said, "Well, what the heck?" So I packed up, moved down to San Diego. I had just gotten out of high school, and so I was 18 years old. Moved down to San Diego, went to work for SeaWorld in the aviculture department. And when I began there, we had, I think, a couple of mute swans and a couple of canvasback ducks. And by the time I left the waterfowl department, we had the largest waterfowl collection in the world. And it was amazing. We'd go to the airport 2 or 3 times a day picking up waterfowl. And of course, we had to figure out, okay, do they need salt water? Do they need fresh water? What kind of food do they need? What kind of situation for breeding and nest boxes? And so we were sort of inventing the science in many ways. And, the park was pretty new. It was less than 10 years old at the time. So it was an amazing, great place to sort of get your feet on the ground as far as professional zoological standards go. And so I went from the aviculture department and I went back to work for my dad for a couple of years doing films. And then SeaWorld called back and asked if I'd like to come back as a trainer. So I came back and took on a job as a trainer. So I worked primarily with marine mammals, dolphins, whales, sea lions, seals, otters, penguins, all sorts of animals, and ended up most of my time there at the killer whale show. I did the Shamu show for 6 or 7 years. So I had some pretty neat adventures with killer whales, and learned a massive amount. And that's when SeaWorld was perceived as a pretty nice park, and actually it was. It was. Probably on the forefront, cutting edge of marine mammals in captivity. I mean, they've made huge investments in building facilities for the marine mammals. Probably bigger investments than any place else in the world to do it right. And they did an outstanding job of building facilities and keeping these animals. And of course, the end result was that animals were breeding in captivity, and that usually doesn't happen unless the animals are pretty their environment.
Right.
So that was an amazing learning situation for me. After I left SeaWorld, I went to work as a cinematographer for a while. I shot a feature motion picture and several commercials and things. And then I got an offer from the Oregon Zoo in Portland. They wanted to start public programming and asked if I would take on the job of being their public program specialist. That I'd go up there and put together programs on grounds, a birds of prey program, a reptile program, a Congo Ranger program, and others, plus outreach programs. I went to all the schools in the area, and then I was the public spokesperson for the zoo too. So I was there a little over 12 years at the Oregon Zoo. And at that time, my father, about the end of my time at the zoo, my father called and told me he had cancer and it was terminal, and he wanted to know if I would consider leaving the zoo and taking Wildlife Images over so it wouldn't die along with him. And How do you say no to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the name Wildlife Images came because of all our film work. He always envisioned a time when maybe the residuals from the film work or other income from film work would perpetually fund wildlife rehabilitation and education, the thing that was the closest to our heart. But of course, animals don't get residuals, and the film business sort of didn't really lead to the income stream he is hoping for. So the name stuck, though. He liked the name Wildlife Images, and we've often wrestled with the idea to change the name, but it's become a kind of an established name here in the Rogue Valley. And so I think if we changed the name, we'd probably alienate a lot of our support.
And you guys live on support, so I get that.
Yeah. As a nonprofit, you're always, you're looking for the next dollar to keep this place afloat, and it gets more expensive every year to maintain this place. We rehabilitate probably 1,200 or so animals every year, and of course, the level of care every year increases. We get better at what we're doing. We have better equipment. We have better people involved, and so not only do the drugs and everything else start costing more, but our dedication to what we do with the animals costs more as well. So, unfortunately, I don't see a way to reverse that trend. We're not going to take less care of the animals. We're going to do a better job every darn time we can. So the place perpetually becomes more and more expensive. Insurances and the pay rate you have to pay people, and if you want to retain people, you have to pay them fairly, and benefits and things like that have just gotten to be very, very expensive, unfortunately.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
So let's talk about the facility and everything you guys do. And I know you had a bear originally or something like that, but how big is the facility? The details of the facility versus me asking the questions. So just dig in.
Yeah, we're roughly 25 acres of property along the edge of the Rogue River. Our property is, of course, backs up to BLM land and then the Rogue River because they have to have a buffer. We're on the wild and scenic part of the Rogue River, so no building can go along the riverside or anything. We have facilities. We have a sort of a wildlife hospital here on the grounds. Then we have about 100 resident animals that are our ambassadors. And they range from our newest one, which is a young grizzly bear cub, to, we have hawks and eagles. We have animals from other continents. We have wallabies. We have wedge-tailed eagle. We have Cinereus vultures. We have Eurasian eagle owls. So we have a variety of animals here that are educational ambassadors. We have wolves. Right now we don't have any cougars, but we have otters. And so we try to build habitats for each one of these creatures. And my dream would be to the public can come here and take a photograph or look at these animals and swear they're in the wild. We want to recreate the wild habitat for every one of these animals. So, of course, otters are in an area where moving water and things like that. So their center of their habitat is a big stream and a pond and a pool for them to play in and all that. So they've got a really nice habitat. We just, as I mentioned, we have a grizzly bear cub now. He's 1.5 years old, named Gilbert. And we got him in through Montana. Apparently there was a shed hunter out in the woods looking for shed antlers and horns and things. and he was apparently approached by a female grizzly bear in apparently an aggressive way. So he didn't have bear spray, so he ended up shooting her and killing her, and then found that there was a cub along with her. So he reported it to the authorities, which was proper, and the authorities, of course, go out and do an investigation. And they found the bear cub, collected the bear cub, took it into a facility in Montana called Montana Wild, which is a state-funded facility where they care for bears and wolves and all sorts of orphaned wildlife like that. It's an amazing facility with really great staff people. So they took this little bear in and gave him a home and took care of him. But grizzly bears become habituated humans very, very quickly. So once a grizzly bear has been around humans, they're not a candidate for release back out in the wild because they don't have that instinctive fear of humans, and they can become quite dangerous. So they, of course, Montana Wild put the word out and wanted to find a good forever home for their bear cub. And one of our new staff members had been a volunteer there, knew about Montana Wild, found out about this little bear cub. So we raised our hand and said, "Hey, we'd be happy to take him on and give him a forever home." And of course, at the time, we didn't have the facility ready for him. We didn't have the finances for it. We didn't have pretty much anything in place. But we had the dedication that we weren't
In the heart.
little guy, have anything but the best. And we wanted to give him a forever home if we could. So, to me, if you're not willing to really practice conservation, don't talk a lot about it. And so, that's, to me, put your money where your mouth is. And so I launched into that. Let's raise some funds for this little guy's habitat and get creative and see what we could do. And so we went up to Montana, picked up this little bear cub, brought him back down here, and we had good holding areas for him, just not a forever area yet. So we were able to secure him in our holding area, and our keeper started working with him while we built his forever area. And the forever area is probably, I'll imagine it's a quarter to half an acre, pretty good sized compound. And of course, it used to be for holding cougars, so we had a nice high fence that was pretty strong. But for a grizzly bear, you have to have non-dig barriers so that he can't dig under the fences. So we had to do trenching all around it and put chain link into the ground all around the facility. We had to install hot wire. We had to do a lot of things physically to the thing. And then, of course, part of now that we're accredited ZAA facility, part of what they want to do is have features that will really enhance this little guy's life. So we built a waterfall, a stream, and a great big pond or big pool for him. And so we got everything, the expertise and the materials together, built all of that stuff. And one other complication is part of our property is BLM property. So we had to go to the BLM folks and say, hey, can we build a pond and things on the property? And fortunately, that worked very well. They were very helpful with us, and we were able to put it all together. So now his name is Gilbert, and he's got a happy forever home that's just absolutely beautiful. I'm really proud of what we were able to put together for this little guy, and he absolutely loves it. It's really, really nice. I feel so good about what we were able to do for this little guy.
That's pretty cool. So tell me how we've got Gilbert's story and how you got him, but all your animals are either abandoned animals or rescued. So how do you find out about that? Or do people find you? How does that work?
A little of both. Mostly people find us, and say, hey, we got an animal, or somebody knows somebody that does have an animal that they should surrender because it's not in the best conditions or whatever. And we get involved that way. And in some areas, it's, people that we've worked with over the years, with some of our birds recently that we acquired. They were in the film business for years. And as I mentioned, the film business has shifted a lot.
Right.
As the business shifted and the work for a lot of these birds dried up, they wanted a forever home for some of the birds. So we ended up with this amazing Cinereus vulture. They're the largest old world vulture, and he's literally he's got a wingspan of about 10 feet long, and he is just a spectacular bird. And he's probably one of maybe a dozen or so in the country.
Wow.
We have a tailed eagle that are an Australian version of kind of the golden eagle. And it came also from the film business. And there's only, I guess, 3 in the country. And so we're real lucky to have it all. And both of these birds are real senior citizens too. They're real old, in their 30s at least. But then we also ended up with a red-tailed hawk that was in a lot of film work too. So it's really, I feel good to be able to offer these animals. They're forever, or their last home. That's really nice. They're sort of like their retirement home, and at the same time, they become educational ambassadors for us, and then have wonderful relationships with our staff. We've got an amazing staff that does great with these animals, and it's great to see that bond form.
You guys also do, and I'm using the terms, and correct me where I'm wrong. Rescue, rehabilitate, and return too. Don't you try to get them back in the wild if it's possible?
We do indeed. That's our goal. In a perfect world, we'd put ourselves out of business. There would be so few animals injured that we wouldn't be needed. That's where the education comes in. But our goal is to get everything that we can back out in the wild. Unfortunately, some animals come in with permanent injuries. They can't go to the wild, so they become educational ambassadors. And for example, we have Miss J, our bald eagle that we have. She fell out of a nest as a youngster and just ready to fledge, and basically hit every branch on the way down through the tree, and was found on the forest floor about a week and a half after crashing with 2 broken wings. Brought into us, and of course the wings had calcified, and we took the bird into some different surgeons that specialize in doing orthopedic surgery, and to look at, could we rearticulate these bones, get them so they'll function so she could fly. But unfortunately, the breaks were very close to joints, and they calcified, and there was no chance of rearticulating the wings. So she became a permanent ambassador, and so we end up with animals like that. There's also animals with psychological damage, like I mentioned with Gilbert, too tame to return to the wild. So you get some animals that can't go back to the wild because of being too tame. The otters came into us from a facility originally in Louisiana, where they're invading a crawfish or a crawdad area, and they were captured, relocated to Ohio, and then we had to purchase them from somebody in Ohio for educational ambassadors. So yeah, our animals come from everywhere. We had a bear that came to us from Palermo, Italy, years ago. That was sort of like a hijacking. Somebody on a ship found a bear cub off the coast of, and I think it was around Coos Bay, Oregon. Threw the bear on the ship and continued on their voyage, and somehow it ended up in Palermo, Italy, on a chain in front of a pet store. And somebody recognized it as a North American black bear, got a hold of the consulate, and the consulate got a hold of it. So it started a whole, the American Humane Society got involved and helped fund getting the bear picked up and brought to us. And it was the only bear I know of that came with its own little passport. It had a little passport with a little paw print on it and everything. So Jane Bear was a really neat story because she came from so far away. So, and we have relationships with, the Australia Zoo that are really good friends with Terry and Robert and Bindi and the whole group there. And we spend a lot of time with them. And, we share stories and ambitions about how to build better places for their animals. And they've done the best job of anybody I've ever seen. They've done an amazing job with their facility.
Is that how you got the wallabies?
No, actually, the wallabies came more locally. They were offered on an exchange. Basically, somebody had them as a surplus. And at one point, we thought about building a kind of almost a children's zoo with some petable animals. It turned out that it was a lot more expense involved, and the public didn't really want to do it that much. And it was kind of too far away from our primary mission. So we kind of shifted gears and got back out of that. But we still have 3 of the wallabies, which are a great part of our facility, though.
There's a thing that you have on your website that I really like. I'm going to repeat it because I wrote it down because I'd never remember it. You say, when you talk about your place, a place where wild things arrive to get a helping hand and leave here, leave having given us the ability to understand. I really like that statement.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I came up with that several years ago.
Can you expand a little bit on that, what they're giving you too? And then I just wanted to tell you, I like the term wild things, but of course it made me think where the wild things are, by the way, isn't that why?
So your question was,
Tell me when you say when giving us the ability to understand. So expand upon that for people too, because you guys do a lot of education. So kind of not only for you, but for the people that come there. Can you just expand on all the different things you guys are doing and really what that saying means to you specifically too? I'm just out of curiosity.
Yeah, well, the idea behind it, of course, is the wildlife that come to us are usually in pretty bad shape. I think nationwide, the survival rate on animals that come into rehabilitation centers is like in the 20% area. And we do a really good job of that. We're probably almost to 30% on our average. But every animal that comes in, their unique injuries, their unique circumstances, sometimes the unique people that bring them in, all tell a story, and that story helps us to better understand the situation these animals are in, and helps us to relate these stories to the public. The animals that we rehabilitate make a very perhaps insignificant difference in the wild population. But the education that we do and get out to the public makes a really big difference in the wild population. Especially kids, like right now we got our Camp EEK, which is Environmental Education in Kids, is going.
Great name. Eek. I love the name.
Yeah, EEK really seems to be very popular. And so the little campers are down in our camp today, actually, and they get firsthand experience with live animals. They get to help us make diets and enrichment for the animals. They come out and they visit with the keepers and hear the stories of the animals and learn all about it. And it may seem like a small contribution, but it's actually not. These are the future voters. These are the future caretakers of the world and the environment. And if somehow we can connect them to wildlife, we can change the world. And I think that's where we strive to do a better job of that always, is to how do you connect people to wildlife? And the education part of what we do, we take animals to senior citizens' homes at times. We, of course, have 35 or so thousand people come through the facility and seeing the animals firsthand. And not only is it done with signage, we have live interpretation going out there with our keepers and our staff people that are doing encounters with the animals. So it may be walking wolves, or they may be watching the otters being trained. And we train a lot of the animals just for health checks and maintenance and all that sort of thing. So they'll learn about, training the animals and how we maintain the animals and the food and all that. We have interns that come into us every summer. I think we have 8 interns right now. They're a great part of the education. They come out here to learn from college or wherever and get hands-on experience with these animals. Where else can they do that? And, they have to experience every end of it, from the raising babies and poking worms in the mouth of baby birds to, the times we have to euthanize an animal that just won't make it. So they get to experience the whole gamut of what goes on in a rehabilitation center, and then part of the education as well. So we educate them. We have volunteers that are the lifeblood of this place. The financial difficulties of a place are mitigated to some degree by volunteerism. We have volunteers that give up their free time and spend a lot of time with us, from preparing diets to working on equipment here, or maintaining the grounds, or any of the different things that have to go on to keep this place viable. So volunteerism, I think, is absolutely necessary to keep a place like this on its feet. And so we're working very hard to increase our volunteers here at Wildlife Images. And they, of course, are educational ambassadors as well. Each one of them that learns something about animals are probably going to share that with their friends. And
Right.
they'll get interested in the wildlife or the cause and maybe participate as well, or spread the word to others. So, and we do a TV show on a regular basis. It's like once a month we do a TV show with our local NBC affiliate, and that's been very helpful because you can get to the eyes of thousands and thousands of people at a time. And we always want to be involved with positive messages. We try to avoid being involved politically or anything like that, because that's just nothing good ever comes of that for a nonprofit. So,
Well, these days in particular.
oh, absolutely. And it's like so polarizing. It's so sad to see. I'd love to see the country come together again somehow. And, Yeah, and that's what we are only going to be involved in positive influence anywhere. I'm not going to get into name calling or any of that stuff ever at this facility.
Well, hey, let me ask you a question on the volunteer program. Do you have people that come from either out of town, and that could be anywhere in Oregon or from other states that just come in and want to volunteer? And typically, when you volunteer, is it for a period of time, or can you do it for the day? And what's the age limit?
Usually, unassisted by the parents, it's 18 years old, so that we can avoid any as much liability as we can.
Sure.
Litigious world anymore. Anything you do could be a future lawsuit, and that could be the end of us. So we have to be very, very careful about what we do. We've had volunteers from all over. In fact, I'll give you a real quick story. We had a volunteer. She was 14 years old, contacted me from Los Angeles and wanted to be a volunteer. And something about her on the phone, she just was so positive and such an interesting person that I, said, well, let me talk to your folks and see if we can work something out. So long story short, her parents ended up coming up here, renting a house nearby for the summer so she could volunteer, and they came and worked with her every day at Wildlife Images. And she came back year after year for probably till she was a full adult, and her parents ended up buying a house up here. So she was a volunteer for 10 or 15 years. And it was a really, really wonderful. In fact, we're still in touch with her. She's now an attorney that specializes in environmental law. So yeah, there's all stories from every walk of life that wants to get involved.
Sounds like she had some pretty good parents too.
Amazing parents. Her parents are some of our best friends still, and they're absolutely incredible people.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FURREALPODCAST, covered by most pet insurance.
So the other thing you do, and I'm going to come back to volunteerism and other things people can do for you, but one of the things I really like about your website, you really do focus on education, because I know not only do you go to senior homes, you go to schools and that. Can you expand upon that too? Because I do think people, especially these days, need to be educated about how you can help with animals, what you learn from animals, and the whole gambit.
Yeah, and the education is, again, I think our number one message. We need to get, do more and more education, do better and better. One of our board members is an educator and has helped us a lot, putting together facilities for the kids here on grounds that are more engaging and better signage, and we're improving on that sort of thing. Of course, ZAA, Zoological Association of America, of course, they highlight education also and help us with that sort of thing. So education's being a huge part of what we do, and I think a lot of it too is it's created opportunities with other organizations that are wonderful. We have like I said, our relationship with the Australia Zoo and the Irwin family is special. We share information back and forth with them. We work real closely with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Forensics Laboratory, and that's the laboratory in Ashland.
Let's talk about that. You and I talked about it. I forgot about that. Let's talk about that deal that they reached out to you guys for. That's a cool story.
Yeah, the forensics lab, it's really a unique facility. It's the only wildlife forensics lab in the world. And what they do is they connect the perpetrator, the victim, and the crime scene together. And so basically what happens is evidence at a crime scene, say it's poaching or whatever, the law enforcement that works the crime scene collects the evidence, whether it's shell casings or find a cell phone or boot prints or whatever it might be that is all tied around this crime scene. They pick up the evidence, they package the evidence. Sometimes it can be a corpse, a dead wolf or a dead whatever it is. They package that up and they send it to our lab in Ashland, and then they have to take the evidence and process the evidence and tell the law enforcement agencies what they've found. Whether it's, hey, I found a bullet and ballistics on the bullet show it's this kind of round, and here's the blah, 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 the ballistics of it, or whatever it may be. There could be, hundreds of different scenarios goes on. So they've got the best scientists in their field there. They've got, the best serologists, the best morphologists, the best mammalogists, and all the different fields covered. And the amazing equipment and very, very dedicated people there. And they do things like international crime. As I mentioned, they process all the crime evidence for 178, I think, CITES subscribing countries worldwide. So not only do they get the evidence from wildlife crime here in North America, they get it from countries all over the world. And so they have equipment to handle biohazards. They've got a biocontainment area there. They've got really great morphologists that can really do a necropsy on an animal and run it through all kinds of different testing. And so they've done cases as bizarre as Russian importing caviar into the United States, and they were taking and poaching American paddlefish and putting that in cans and calling it caviar, and they were helping exterminate a natural resource in North America because they've overfished the beluga sturgeon so badly in Russia. So the lab had to get involved and be able to tell a sturgeon egg from a paddlefish egg, and then of course present that to a jury of 12 and let them understand the science, how it works and how they know which is which. And then they had to confiscate shipments of the materials and then run it through all the tests. And so anyway, it was a long case. But it turned out the poaching of the paddlefish was a very, very serious crime, and they were able to solve the case. So the forensic lab does amazing work, and we're the only outside agency with an MOU to be able to have access to the lab and educate on their behalf. And it's something I'm very proud of. They're an incredible crew, and we've been involved with them for probably close to 30 years with our relationship with them. So
I think, how many animals a year do you rescue or rehabilitate? What's the number again?
roughly about 1,200.
And that's every year.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what the number is since you guys, the inception of this thing? Do you have a rough estimate?
I was thinking, I'm not sure how recent this is, but I think it's it's somewhere over 40,000 animals now.
That's crazy. And what's not to kind of really go too deep in this, and what's the craziest animal you guys have had? And there's probably several, but you can think of just off the top of your head. I'm just curious.
Craziest animal we've ever had.
I mean, a grizzly's pretty crazy, but
yeah, we've had cougars and grizzly bears, and we center primarily on North American wildlife. Occasionally, we'll get calls from somebody that's got an exotic animal, but we usually don't get involved. It's not our thing.
Sure.
Having our resources to somebody's pet, yak or whatever it might be, isn't really our thing. I guess one of the things, the weirdest ones that we had not long ago was an Argali sheep. And Argali sheep is a highly endangered species. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the only one in the United States. And it was part of a wildlife crime as well.
Where are they from?
Himalayas, I believe.
Oh, cool.
They're only one in the country, and it was apparently smuggled into the country. And the people that had this sheep were basically, as a big male, they would dart it on a regular basis, extract the semen from it, and then sell the semen. They would sell semen straws. And I can't remember what they said, but it was like $20,000 for a semen straw, and they would extract, multiple numbers of those every month out of this thing.
That's crazy.
And so, this animal, what a life. You go for 3 weeks and then get hit with a dart gun and sedated and wake up dazed and sore, I'm sure, and then go through it again and again and again. So an awful life.
Yeah.
So he was confiscated by U.S. Fish and Wildlife when they found out what was going on. And then we held it here at our facility for several years until the case was adjudicated, and they decided where the Argali sheep can spend the rest of its life in a happy situation. So it ended up back in Syracuse, New York,
Oh, wow.
at a facility back there, and big pastures, really good facility. But that was one of the meanest animals. I'd rather than get in there with him. He was, huge and powerful, and oh my gosh, he'd be at full speed at about 2 strides, and oh my gosh, that was one fierce critter.
Well, they've been treated so miserably. I'd be furious too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one that was difficult to take on and deal with, because when we picked it up, it was being processed in a way that we weren't allowed to know what we were going to pick up. We were basically told, "Can you come to so and so place and have a trailer big enough for an animal this big or whatever?" And what kind of animal is it? Can't tell you. Okay, well, and all this you can't tell you, and so we ended up getting him and bringing him back. And it's like, holy smokes! And all the way back, he's bashing the heck out of the inside of the trailer. You'd feel the truck surge every time he'd smash the.
Yeah, I bet.
So, like, oh my God, what have we gotten into now? And
Well, it's kind of exciting because you never know. You wake up each day, you never know where you're going to get, and you've got all these other animals. It's kind of cool.
yeah, and it felt good doing this, because I know we were a big step in improving this animal's life forever. And, going from what it was to where he is now, I feel great. It was a heck of a strain on our resources because, our gully sheep are not our expertise.
Right.
But, it's somebody has to do it. And we had to be kind of like off the grid where nobody could find out where he was, because he was valued at over $1 million, we were told.
Wow.
So it's like, dang, the responsibility of having him here and the worry was pretty intense. But we got through it, and I feel good that we did it.
So you guys have a clinic there too that because do you have vets on staff?
Yeah, we have a vet on staff.
So I'm saying there's a method to my madness here, by the way. Generally, most people have no clue what I'm thinking. But so you've got the clinic there, you've got a vet on staff, you've got all your facilities, you got to take all these animals. So how do you guys raise funds? Are you government funded at all? And how can people help you guys?
No, we have no government funding, no state funding of any sort. We're all private. And so we have to raise every nickel of everything that we have here. And it's becoming more difficult every day. As I mentioned, that expenses are greater, and that's out of our control. For example, 2 years ago, our fire insurance for the place was like $12,000. Then in a year's time, they raised it to over $75,000. And so we just can't afford fire insurance right now. So you're in one of those situations where, what the heck do you do? So to fundraise, we do a fundraiser every springtime. We do our Saving Wildlife fundraiser, which is an auction that we do, and a meal and that sort of thing. And that's usually helps us with our, it could raise as much as 10% of our budget in a year. Then we also do a holiday appeal where we do a letter out to 5,000 or 6,000 people to try to raise some more money. Then we do, of course, we charge admission, which is probably 20% of what we're able to do to sustain the place, and Camp Eek and that sort of thing. We do go for some grants, and we get grants, but of course, grants are project driven. It's not like money you could use to pay staff or anything. It usually has to go for something. And so we do some grant writing and that sort of thing. But the biggest part of our support has been philanthropy. People that put us in their estate planning has saved our bacon many, many times. And I think, individual gifts or people that put us in their estate planning makes a huge difference. And we need things like, I think our our newest vehicle has got 200,000 miles on it, like vehicles and things like that. They're not sexy or exciting for people, and they don't seem to relate to animals, but we got to go pick up the food in them. We got to go pick up animals in them. Sometimes we got to, get supplies. So, we need vehicles, things like on the property here. We use golf carts because they're quiet and they, just whir around. The animals aren't disturbed by it. The guests aren't disturbed by them, but our golf carts are all, they look like they've been through war. So there's a lot of these things that, can really be a huge help here. But monetary support and materials and supplies are just huge, and of course volunteerism in that as well.
So tell everybody what your website is. I'm assuming you've got all the donation stuff on there because I can't remember seeing that, but I'm sure it's there. Tell everybody how to find you guys, social media and that, and how people can help if they want to donate money and that, how they can find all that.
Well, the best place is to go to our website, which is wildlifeimages.org. And it's most of the materials and the contact information can be found right there. We are active on social media. I think we have one of our keepers that does our social media thing, and she does a beautiful job on Facebook and Twitter and those sort of things. So we can be found on those platforms as well. But our website's probably the most user-friendly way to find us anywhere. And of course, we're located in Southern Oregon, which is the hub of the known universe. So that's basically what I know about how to get a hold of us anyway, the best.
Now, one last question on to be a volunteer.
Uh-huh.
So, can people do it for a day, or generally do you have them come in, but they commit for a period of time?
Ideally for a period of time, because part of what we have to do is train the volunteers, and you have to learn how to
Right.
eat diets and all that. And one day you won't even know how to be. You won't be trained enough to do much. So it takes probably. I can go from my wife's perspective because she's a volunteer here too. She volunteers 2 days a week. It took her probably 2 or 3 weeks to get comfortable with what she's supposed to do and be able to work independently. And that's where they become real valuable, when they can work independently and they don't have to have a keeper or somebody overshadowing them all the time. Volunteers of all sorts, but ideally if you can come in 1 or 2 days a week, that's ideal for us.
But if I live in Austin, Texas, like I do, and I wanted to come and volunteer, you'd want somebody to come in for, I'm assuming, a couple of weeks or something like that?
Well, that'd be wonderful, but we'll take anybody. If you got a pulse,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're pretty much good to go. Yeah, because there's, we've got so many things we have to do here constantly. That we'll find something for you, whether it's working with our landscape folks. We have one lady that does all of our landscape work here, and she has a couple of volunteers. And but the animal stuff. Right now we're in baby season, so we've got probably a dozen baby raccoons and baby skunks and baby birds, and that's pretty quick to learn how to feed all those little guys and get involved with that sort of thing. And baby season is kind of one of those magic times where it's like, the public can see them. We can't expose the public to the rehab process, but when we get volunteers in there helping, they get a chance to, roll up their sleeves and see these little guys.
Okay. Again, by the way, for you guys listening, it's in the description, but say the website again, and then I'm gonna torture you with telling the joke thing. So, what's your website again?
The website is wildlifeimages.org is our website, and I think there's www.wildlifeimages.org.
Yeah.
Probably the official thing. I don't think anybody ever used that www thing, but yeah, and you should get about all the information you need right there. And you needed a wildlife joke, right?
Yeah, well, I haven't got there yet. So it's what I'm going to do. And so for everybody that's listening, it's that time where, guess what? The guest is going to tell the joke this time. Well, I know you cringe when I do it. So, Dave, I know that I begged you to do a joke. I have one if you don't have one. But if you've got one, I guarantee the audience will be very pleased that it's not me telling the joke. Just let us know. So what's your joke?
I don't know. I tried to find something that would be okay, but what animal should you never play cards with?
Would I guess, but I know that one. Probably a shark.
No, a cheetah.
Oh, even better. I was going to say card shark.
Yeah, no. So anyway,
That's great. And so you guys, as they always say that are on listening, please, if you got your kids want to be on the show, you want to be on the show, grandkids, nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever, gladly. I know when I ask the guests, they kind of cringe, say, okay, Mark, I guess I'll do it, or I get stuck doing it. So if you would do that, and just send me an email, mkyle@forrealpodcast.com. If you listen to past, I have kids on all the time. So please do that, because trust me, neither one of us want to tell the joke, and we certainly want your family to tell the joke. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for being on the show. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on, and I know you guys are doing great things, but really, thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
Well, it's been a chunk of heaven. Thanks for having us, or me.
Well, thank you so much. And then for everybody else out there listening, keep listening, keep following, spread the word. We're always looking for new ideas. Again, mkyle@forrealpodcast.com. If you send me information, I guarantee I get back to everybody. But most importantly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.